Hello, everybody, and welcome back to VolleyTalk. It is a little bit later than our regular time on Tuesdays, but we are here with some really exciting guests, and we are really excited for this episode. So, this is VolleyTalk, the regular live stream that we do every single week. If you are new here, we just talk about everything to do with volleyball, from recruiting to mechanics to how to get more playing time to girls volleyball, boys volleyball, the differences, everything, and anything in between, I guess. So today we have an episode that we haven't done before, and we have some retired professional players here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we also have Kelly and Aaron. Aaron is a former professional one, but he has also been on this live stream before, but we do have somebody new here that has never been on VolleyTalk before. So I'm going to go ahead and let him start. Daniel, if you want to give us a little bit of your background and who you are.
Yeah, okay. My name is Daniel Cagliari. I'm a Brazilian, former volleyball player. Like you said, I played 7 professional seasons in Brazil and France. Last year was my last season, and I just moved into US to start a new life with my wife. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and yeah, happy to be here.
Amazing. And what position did you play?
I was an opposite.
Awesome. Great. Good. I'm excited to get into this conversation with you. But first, Aaron, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Aaron Shepardson, 17 years Division I coaching. Before that, professional player in Indonesia, Europe. Had a cup of coffee with the U.S. men's national team, and love my coaching career. And recently left Division I to join Powercore 360. So
amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. And what positions did you play?
Outside hitter primarily, a little bit of libero.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. No. And then Kelly, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself. I know you frequent on here often, but.
Hi, I'm Kelly Fiesler. I am by formal education, physical therapist and biomechanist. I'm spending most of my time in the sports medicine world of orthopedics. I have coached junior national volleyball for a couple decades, and I am a Powercore 360 coach, and working here on trying to get athletes to understand the importance of hitting the ball with good movement patterns to reduce injury and help them be more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, for this episode today, we are going to specifically get into some men's volleyball and maybe some of the differences, similarities between men playing and girls volleyball. So to start, I'm going to open this question up to everybody, but I'm going to focus on mechanics here first. How do proper mechanics contribute to generating more power when hitting the ball? And can you guys break down maybe some of the key mechanics involved? And with this too, I know this is kind of a loaded question. Do boys and girls use the same exact mechanics to hit the ball harder? Maybe I'll have Aaron start this one.
Sure. Well, I'll take your second question first. I mean, the answer there is that yes. I mean, they should, right? I mean, the anatomy in that respect, as far as attacking arm swing and body rotation goes, it's the same for men and women. So, I think one of the big differences with the boys is sometimes some boys can hit really really hard with poor mechanics, and they can a lot of times get kills and sometimes hitting the ball faster than human reaction time is, and they may not know that they could actually be hitting harder or be hitting safer or last longer or maybe hit harder on broken plays. They're not maybe aware. It doesn't pop off the page like it might with immediate technical changes in a women's context.
That's interesting, Aaron, that you say that, because the one thing that I've noticed, and I've coached both male and female volleyball players, and then of course at our clinics, is that, the fellas have this underlying kind of strength at a younger age that females takes more time for them to build that kind of strength. And what I notice a lot is the fellas are able to hit the ball hard, but they do it in a way that is not necessarily well organized or in control, and they're always trying to get that 10-foot line shot versus really focusing on mechanics to open up their game. And I've noticed at our clinics, we have guys who start that way and they're there to learn and they're really eager to learn, which is amazing. And then within, a 2-day period, they're able to hit the ball even harder and create better shots because they've worked on the mechanics of opening their chest, rotating their hips and their shoulders, and using their body to contact the ball versus just getting up and pounding it. And I'm interested to know, yours and Daniel's perspective of that, because I come from a different angle than you guys do.
Like you guys said, for me, like it's crucial, the mechanics in the hitting movement. Like Aaron's saying, you don't hit like 1 or 2 balls by game. If you take, for example, my position, you can have like a 3-hour game and you can hit, maybe you need to hit 50 balls in a game. So that's why the mechanics are so important. I think it's like a symphony between like the arms, the elbow, the shoulder, the legs, because probably if you hit using mostly your shoulder, at the end of the game, your shoulder will be completely tired. So I think this symphony gives you more like endurance to play a long game. And even like if you hit hard, is not a guarantee that you score the point. So also the control, spiking in the right direction, in the right height. So yeah, it's very, very important.
Yeah. A common thing I'm hearing between all of you is that, the mechanics are important, but not necessarily something that boys maybe learn right away, because they just maybe can hit the ball hard, right? With this, I guess a question, maybe Daniel, you can start with this, but for common mechanical mistakes, talking about it from that angle, what are some or the most common mistakes you see in mechanics for men volleyball players?
So there's a few. What I've experienced throughout my career, and I've seen the teammates, and even I had these problems when I was starting volleyball. I can say I think like landing in 1 feet, it's a common thing, and it's very dangerous for your body, for your knee, for your ankle. So I think that's it's very common, but it's something that you shouldn't do because it's dangerous for you. Also, not standing tall while you're spiking. A lot of players spiking with not like an extension of your arm, and then you lose height, and then you probably find a block or the net because you're not spiking high. So yeah, for me, like those two are the most common ones, and you should everybody should give attention to those ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was a young player coming up, and even sometimes in college, I think the most important part of the game was the pregame warmups. And if you could win warmups, then you went home feeling good regardless if you won the game or not. And to do that, you're trying to hit straight down and you're trying to bounce the ball and all kinds of nonsense like this, but you're actually using very poor mechanics when you do that. You're actually pulling down with your lat and hitting at shoulder level, and none of that really helps you too much in a good high level volleyball game. You really got to be hitting high and flat and around and off the edges of a block. And so the boys don't always learn to do that. And I came up playing baseball. I had a very good arm. I had a fast arm because of all my baseball experience. But ball players were releasing from down here, at our ear to fire the ball across the infield. We're not necessarily, trying to maximize our reach or anything like that. So, I came into this with could hit plenty hard, but I was hitting very, very low, just from my arm mechanics that I brought into the mix here. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. And with this too, maybe Kelly, you can speak to this more a little bit. What types of injuries then, if mechanics aren't done correctly from a young age and then they, play their whole careers with these poor mechanics, what are some of the most common injuries? Are they slightly different on the boys' side than the girls, or are they pretty similar?
Statistically, they're pretty similar. What we see in volleyball, the predominant injuries, that aren't like a, what's the right word I want? Like a mechanism of injury that's like an, what's the word I want? Like unexpected injury, right? You land funny and you sprain your ankle. You do something strange, you step on the feet of the blocker next to you and you hurt your knee. Those are things that unfortunately happen in the game that are not as controllable as reducing your risk of having a shoulder injury, right? And Danny mentioned that, you're hitting ball after ball after ball. Maybe you're hitting the ball 50 times in a 3 hour, do you say like 3 hour match, right?
Can be.
Yeah, right. So you're hitting the ball over and over and over, just using mostly your arm and your shoulder. So you're setting yourself up for not only, potential uh, overuse injury during your career, but then even post career, having really significant problems, even beyond your career with your shoulder. And then another one, a lot of back injuries take athletes out. And a lot of that comes from both the mechanics of getting up into the air and using more of your arm and kind of doing the back bend, forward bend mechanical thing to hit the ball versus opening your chest with a nice neutral load of that arm and then using your body to hit the ball. Arm obviously goes through the ball, but you're using your core musculature, which can generate a lot more power than the muscles of your arm. And so not only does that create shoulder issues, but hitting with a high elbow initially and using that backwards bend, forward bend mechanics puts a lot of strain on your low back and can create some serious issues. One of the greatest complaints I get from athletes, volleyball players, whether they're male or female young volleyball players, is shoulder and back pain. For sure.
And we do have two former professional athletes here that played volleyball. So maybe you guys could tell us, what was your experience like with injuries, or teammates that you saw with injuries? What were some of the most common things that you guys saw?
Yeah, I can give an example for myself. I had this season in France, and in the preseason we had a new setter, and he was telling me we should play faster, and I was like, sure, let's play faster. But then the result of that is that I was waiting too much for the ball, and then I was landing my body to the outside, and then I was landing on one feet, and I started to have knee pains. And when I went to the physiotherapist, he was like, it's probably because you're landing a lot on one feet. So again, the mechanics and our coach, and we did a work for me to go to search the ball and start landing 2 feet again. And then basically after I started to do that, I started to practice that, it became normal to land with both of my legs again, and then the pain was gone. So yeah, it happened with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, do you have any experience, I guess, you could speak to?
Well, one thing I learned from Kelly was, that pain is not supposed to be normal. And so maybe Kelly, you can diagnose me, but why do I always have that pain in the back of my shoulder after every tournament? I thought that was just normal volleyball, but maybe you can tell me what that was,
Well, I'd have to see some swings so I can give you a true analysis of what you were doing, but probably a little bit. You have a pretty nice draw though when I watch you hit down balls, so I would assume.
Well, I do now, but
Okay, but you didn't
there was a
before.
time where I
So
did not, right?
right. So a lot of times it's that elevation of that arm, right? And then you're using the wrong musculature to hit through the ball. And the other piece of that is that we are actually set up so that after we contact the ball, our arm is still moving really fast. Something has to slow that down. And if you aren't learning to really get a nice connection of your shoulder blade to your back until contact point, you don't get the benefit of those muscles on the backside of your body slowing down your arm swing, just like you would for pitching. Every motion that we do with that overhead attack or throwing a ball, there's a phase of that swing that it has to decelerate as well. And that's that posterior part of your back that and the shoulder area that slows down the ball or slows down your arm as it swings to the ball. But I don't know. Send me some swings and I'll take a look.
Okay, I'll go dig out my old VHS from
Yeah.
from my playing days.
Yeah. But you know what's funny, Aaron, you brought up that pain isn't normal. We have a culture right now of young kids that normalize pain, and even Darian, you and I get a chuckle sometimes out of some of the Instagram responses we get from both males and females, but really the male population too is like thinks that of course their arms should hit, they're hitting or hurt, they're hitting that ball hard and it should hurt after every tournament, otherwise you're not hitting hard, that sort of mentality. And I'm not a fella, but I'd like us to figure out how we can get these young guys to shift their way of thinking about that pain factor and having better mechanics and still hit the ball hard.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. I mean, we definitely get a lot of comments on Instagram just saying like if we say something about an off season or about injury, we get a lot of young volleyball players that are like, "What? Like, of course you're gonna have pain. Like, pain is a part of like my shoulder should hurt, basically." I guess what are your guys' thoughts about that, and what would you say to a young volleyball player if they were to say that to you?
Fellows.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things that I think we've had some good leadership in our sport is from our national team coaches, and I think ever since Hugh McCutcheon took over the team years ago, I mean they really worked to analyze the arm swing, and they really worked to get the guys rotating their bodies and actually studying mechanics, and so those examples are out there for us now, and Spera has continued that. And there's so many resources out there now and good examples. So we just have to show. I think the guys will respond to hey, look at these professional athletes, look what they're doing. We just need to get it in front of them and educate them, and we need to build that culture of training and mechanics into the younger levels at this point, so that they can have that appreciation for things, and that they don't normalize pain. And our message needs to be, hey, you can actually play a whole career. You can last a long time. You can last a 5-set match. And you don't have to hurt the next day.
Yeah, what I'll say is if you're starting with volleyball, you definitely should find someone that can teach you the right technique and the right mechanics, because you need to know how to hit, and then you'll say, okay, this feels good. Because if you know that, if you have these basics, then if someday something happened, like if you try a new movement or if you change the speed of your set, and then you spike and you feel something different, then you will know, look, something here isn't right, so I should look into it. Because if you don't have this basics, if you don't know how to spike and feel good with your movement, then you'll normalize pain. You will say, okay, this is normal. I feel a little bit of pain, but this is normal. Like you said, pain is not normal. So it's really important for me to learn the right technique and start from this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of this, do you guys have any good drills drills or warm up things that you would suggest to any athletes to work on before or during playing or during, training, stuff like that?
Well, one of just the basic principles of coaching and of learning and of life is that it's the things that you do every day are going to make the biggest impact in your life, and you can apply that principle to so many different areas, of course. But so for my teams, our very first swing of the day was a very easy slow roll shot, but with a maximum reach and a proper draw under the chin and rotating your body. And we're trying to, just reinforce those mechanics in every opportunity we get. If we're ever in, a non-competitive, repetitious, maybe some hitting lines or something, it's a great time to just focus on your mechanics. Maybe it's just as you're warming up, or maybe just working to rep some timing with your setter, but you're always aware of the mechanics, especially when there's not a point on the line or a block to deal with. So it's just kind of being intentional in some of those moments where you can devote, some attentional resources to your mechanics.
Yeah, for sure. We do have a seems like a beginner volleyball player maybe here, and they asked just what is a libero. So maybe Aaron, since you played libero, I think you could maybe answer this question for us.
Okay, sure. Well, libero is a position that was created, I guess, in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s was this idea came about that, we want to extend rallies longer. And so they put a permanent, defensive position, in the back row only, so that player can go in for any player in the back row and, keep the rallies going. And I think initially people just put their best passer back there, so side out became easier. But I think over time, I think that libero's become a pretty amazing defensive player as well, and it's created some really exciting volleyball in our sport now.
Yeah. In simple terms, when you watch a match, that libero is the one player on the court that has a different color of jersey, right? And you'll notice that they go in and out for typically two of the athletes. Oftentimes it's the middles, right, Aaron? And they play the back row for those two athletes.
Yeah, for sure. We have another question here too. This is, how can players safely return to play after a major injury? So if you guys have ever received an injury or had an injury while playing and then maybe went back, and then maybe Kelly, you can speak to this as well.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is, you have to number one, get to a healthy point with whatever your injury is. And certain injuries have a kind of a almost prescribed period of time that is required, like an ACL, right? It's very researched on what that athlete can do at what time in their recovery, and then there are parameters that go with getting them back on the court, and that's super important to seek out a really good physio who understands your sport, especially. But then on top of that, I would say, because like for me as a PT, my favorite athlete to work with is actually the athlete that is ready to return to sport from a PT perspective, the ortho perspective. They've been discharged, right? But they're not really ready to get back on the court and perform. And I think you really need to find someone who specializes in the ability to help you get to your that high level of intense play, and slowly help you get back onto the court in a safe way, to really be able to get back and not re-injure yourself. So it takes a lot of training, a lot of effort on that injured athlete's part to get themselves to that place. And I mean, fellas, have you guys had an injury where you were out for any prolonged period of time and had to work yourself back in?
Yes, I did. And my first advice will be, don't try to do it yourself. Search for help, for physios, for coaches that understand this process. I had last season, actually, a tiny fracture on my hand, on a tiny bone. And it took me 2 months to come back. But after 2 weeks, I was looking at the gym, and I was thinking, okay, I can come back right now. I'm ready. I can go and hit harder. But then I had people that make me understand that it isn't the process. You have to come back progressively, because Otherwise, you can develop something that will be a chronic pain that will be with you forever, or you'll like lose some kind of mobility. So it's very important to follow the steps, because yeah, you maybe feel like you're ready to come back, but you need to respect the times of your body, of your recovery. So yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. The lower half of your body, right? I think it's super important that you are at a level that you can jump, land, cut, change direction, those sorts of things without any, you might have some discomfort or soreness, but if you have a situation where you're not fully able to land on both feet well, you're taking like some non-weight bearing, you know, your body is averse to like putting weight on that. Let's say you sprained your left ankle, and when you land, more of your weight's on your right foot than your left foot because your ankle's not quite ready. That is a recipe for disaster. You know, I've been at big tournaments where I've had a coach come up to me and say, "Hey, will you look at this kid's ankle and, you know, let's get her back in there." It's like, you know, a big match, and the first thing I look at is whether or not they can weight bear the same, you know, equally on both sides. And I think it's really important when you have a lower extremity, meaning your legs, foot, ankle, knee, injury, if you can't fully weight bear and use both of your legs the same way, you're setting yourself up for potentially an even bigger injury. So super important to have someone guide you in getting you back. And again, you might not necessarily be, especially with the ankle, 100% like no symptoms whatsoever, right? You might have some soreness and whatnot, but it shouldn't be pain that limits your ability to move and land and run and jump. So
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. With this, I know that Erin, you talked about this earlier. Actually, sorry, we have one question from Instagram I want to get to before I ask this question. So this next question is, which body parts are most vulnerable during volleyball matches and training? So maybe what do you have to be most mindful of for injury?
well, shoulder, back, those are two big ones, depending on what you're doing, right? And knees, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, as far as acute injuries, it would be the knees, I think. And you know, there's such a push now to run faster and faster, and so you know, there's really not a whole lot of avoiding landing on one foot in a lot of ways. What best we can do is a little bit of risk management, and when we can land on 2 feet, we should be our default, you know, attacking motion should be to land on 2 feet as often as possible. And so, you know, we're never going to eliminate the risk completely. You know, there's it's, you know, blocking is a lot of landing on one foot because you're flying sideways through the air. But you know, at least we can mitigate the especially in a fast offense style game. We can always we can at least mitigate it, and you know, and try to land staggered, land with some weight on our other foot. Um, but you know, the knees are going to be vulnerable acutely, and then it's the shoulder and back that's going to be the chronic injuries.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I would argue with attacking, especially at a younger age, that you can control your landing at a younger age, especially because the offense they run fast offenses, especially those open teams, right? But I would argue that you can have much more control over that at a younger age and reducing, you know, your risk of injury, especially chronic knee pain because you're constantly landing on one foot because you're not utilizing good mechanics. I mean, I get it. Like when Daniel was saying they're trying to run a fast offense and he would go and then the ball would be to where he would have to lean and try to attack the ball, you know, do something really athletic in the air. You know, I see with older athletes, grown men, right, and grown women who are professional, they have completely different bodies than these young kids. You guys are
Yeah.
strong and developed and physically just a different athlete, right? So I think it's imperative that the younger population really focus on making sure the most of the time you should be landing on 2 feet, especially attacking the ball. I know blocking is a little bit different because of the way that you have to move across the net, but I would argue that young kids attacking, they need to be landing on 2 feet the majority of the time for sure.
Yeah. With this, to get to kind of what I was leading to, but Erin, you talked about this earlier, if you show with Hugh McCutcheon really taking over the team and then, explaining and showing the boys the mechanics from a young age is what you were saying. How important is this for coaches? Maybe if we talk about this from a coaching perspective, for coaches of both boys and girls to explain mechanics to their athletes?
Like, why are we, we're professionals. We should know how to, we know how to hit the ball. I think there was a little bit of that going on when we first started, bringing this into our national team programs, but it's super important. And we really need to follow that lead and set up our kids to play the game as long as they might want to play it. And so that, they're not retiring from, exhaustion of being in pain all the time, that they're able to have those full careers and enjoy the process of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just want to say from the coach perspective, I think it's very important, like, to teach your athlete while you can, because sometimes when you go through your career and you get into a point where you're like playing professionally or playing in college, I know the level is very high, and then normally you focus on most like advanced things. So like if you're training a player that is starting, I would say like to focus on the process, not in the result. To like practice the mechanics and don't focus on if I'm scoring the point or no. Focus on what my body looks like. I think these days we have so much like technology to help. You can like use a camera and analyze the movement, and you should do this when the player is starting, when the player is young, because then he'll have the basis to go through, like Aaron said, through his career. He can play as long as he wants because he will know the mechanics of the sport that he's playing.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have a good question here from Instagram. This is, how do biomedical imbalances and improper technique contribute to chronic overuse injuries in volleyball players, and what specific interventions can be implemented to correct these issues to optimize long-term performance? Maybe I'll let Kelly go ahead and start with this one.
Yeah, well, biomechanically, our body is set up, our joints, that there is a position that they're in, or the way that we move our bodies is more ideal for the way that we're built, right? And I'll just like look at the shoulder. The shoulder is a very complex joint. And while I can raise my arm overhead pretty easily, right? And I have all of these, what we call degrees of freedom of movement. When I go to throw or hit a ball, it's really important that the phases in which my arm moves, they go in kind of a sequential order. Now, I'm not saying that you won't have times where your arm pattern isn't perfection, right? You have to do something really athletic. It's a different kind of ball. Maybe you're taking a cut shot or something instead of getting up and pounding through the ball. But it's really important that we do everything we can to strengthen the patterns of movement, right? That are the most natural movement pattern for your body parts, right? So with the shoulder, one of the things is that high elbow in the initial phase of the arm swing. Well, we don't want to load with a high elbow. We want to load with a nice neutral elbow, just like you would if you were throwing a football or a baseball. You would never, or softball, you would never see a quarterback or baseball, softball player raise their arm up in the air and throw a ball. That just makes no sense mechanically for the shoulder. And then from a kinesiological perspective, like using all the strength that you have in your body to put some heat behind your ball, right? So Powercore 360, honestly, I'll do a little plug here, has an incredible program for developing proper mechanics of hitting a ball based on science, based on the biomechanics of the shoulder, and based on using your entire body to attack the ball. And once you do that, it opens you up to being able to take all sorts of shots while hitting the ball versus if you have a high elbow, you can only hit so many shots, right?
Yeah.
When you load. So did that answer the question?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I sometimes get on my little rant and I'm like, wait, did I answer the question?
No, I think that was great.
Yeah.
So I want to
I can add to that.
yeah.
One of my chronic overuse injuries was a terrible bone bruise in the ball of my left foot. So I was always landing on one foot, and I was in terrible pain, especially after the games when the adrenaline wore off. And I just had would walk around limping all through campus, all day the next day after a game. And so one of the things that I learned, later on in my career was to fully rotate my hips so that my right hip was in front, on the front side, so that I could actually land with some pressure on my right foot instead of just all on my left foot. But that's one of the another, in addition to the arm draw and the elbow, is not just the power you get from rotating your hips, but also the safety of the landing. When you get that right hip in front, that right foot in front, you can actually land on 2 feet much easier and distribute the load of that landing much better. I had to learn that later on, and my the pain in my foot was like a distant memory. It never came back after I learned to do that.
Yeah, and you know what's cool about that, Aaron, is you can fix it, right? Like spending some time figuring out how to create that rotation, you were able to probably hit the ball even harder than you already were and protect your body and get rid of that chronic nagging foot pain that you had. And that's the really cool thing about really understanding the mechanics of hitting and figuring out how to get your body to do those things. That rotation component and the arm load and arm pattern, they go together, right? It's really hard to have one without the other. And it can make a huge difference in the health of your body, and also make hitting a lot more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go through one last question here for each of you guys to answer. And have it be the same question, just kind of a final wrap up question. And I want to speak specifically to male volleyball players here, something that we don't call out specifically very often on this live stream. What is one piece of advice that you would give to, a young male volleyball player that wants to go on to play, at the next level, whether it's college or professionally? What is some of the biggest piece of advice you guys could offer up? Maybe I'll start with Daniel.
I would say search for a good club, a good organization that can provide you can teach you the good mechanics, the good techniques. I think it's important to understand how to practice and how to evolve your game, because I had a coach and he used to say, if you're practicing doing the wrong technique, you're not practicing, you're just getting tired. So I would say that you have to understand that if you're starting to play volleyball and you want to play for many years, you'll get into a point where it's a game of details. So in a game, sometimes the one person makes so much difference. So it might seem a little bit too much, because I know when I started volleyball, the only thing I wanted to do is grab a ball, go and hit all day. But then I started to understand that there's more than this in the game, and And yeah, it's very important to learn all the basics, all the mechanics, because you'll get into a point where you're going to play a very good volleyball, and then you'll understand that the details are so important.
Yeah, great advice.
I would
I
say,
think we
go ahead.
can take a little bit of a lesson from some other sports. As I watch, I talk to baseball coaches I know. A baseball coach with a team, they're a lot of times they're limited in the time they have. They've got so much time on the field, and their job is to get the team to function a lot of times. And they may or may not know the perfect hitting mechanics, but they regardless if they do or not, they don't have time to break down each individual swing in their practice. And that's maybe a change in the economics of youth sports or whatever. But we're seeing in baseball, golf, tennis, quarterbacks. I mean, you're getting outside coaching that is mechanically based. They're breaking down video of what you're doing. They're showing you, here's how you could move more efficiently, more powerfully. I think those examples are all over the place in other sports, and I think volleyball's starting to change. But to Daniel's point, yes, we need to be seeking out either clubs or coaches that are actually providing, not just the 6 versus 6, get in the gym for 2 hours and then wave the next teams on. Let's take some time to actually, learn our mechanics as well and learn our fundamentals and be able to play in a healthy way for a long time.
That's so funny. I was gonna say very similar, Aaron, is look outside to the other sports that you guys love to watch. Watch your QBs, watch your basketball players, watch your baseball pitchers, the tennis players that you love to watch. They're constantly doing training of specific pieces of their game, right? And they're breaking down the minutia of every part of the movement pattern. They're not just going out and whacking at balls and hitting ball after ball after ball. They're really analyzing each piece of the swing. And I was going to say the same thing. We have to train, right? And that training doesn't necessarily come from the coach that you play for necessarily, and that's okay. Seek outside expertise, go out and really, really focus on working on your personal skill set. And then when you get to practice, you'll be able to, offer more to your team. You'll be able to be a greater influence during a match. And those things don't just happen from hitting balls at practice. They just don't. Golfers, how much time do they spend on the green just focused on the putt? And they get how many putts per is it a match? Golf match?
Round.
Yeah, golf match. That's right. So I would look at it that way. I would look to my other, especially guys who tend to be really into lots of different sports, especially watching them. Look to those other athletes, collegiate athletes, professional athletes. What are they doing? They're not just playing their game. They're training their skill set.
Yeah, that's right. Even, professional golfers, professional baseball players, they're in the cages every day. They're on the driving range every day. If the professionals are doing that, certainly we should be doing that for our youth players.
That's right, for sure.
One last question here from Instagram. How can a volleyball coach balance pushing players for peak performance while minimizing the risk of overuse injuries, particularly when competing at an elite level where physical demands are high and recovery time is limited?
I honestly, this is a PT perspective. I would say pay attention to how many, there are swing counts in baseball, or I mean pitch counts, sorry. There are pitch counts in baseball. We don't have swing counts in volleyball. I don't understand that, right? We need to really, as a coach, I think you should be paying attention to how many swings did your outside have in the matches over your weekend tournament? You know, if you're playing into the gold round and you're up into the final, you know, part of gold, how many swings did your outside have? How many times did your middle have to run side to side to side to side and block a ball? What is their fatigue factor, right? And it may feel like you can't give them rest, but and I am, you know, I have not coached at the collegiate level, but even at youth level, if we've played in a tournament all weekend and I'm a normally Monday scheduled practice, if I can't shift my practice, then we do a walkthrough. We break down, we talk about the matches, we do a walkthrough through things versus letting them, you know, jump more or swing at more balls. You do have control over it. I would say focus on, um, you know, really, what's the word I want, guys? Intentional, purposeful reps versus lots of reps, right? And really pay attention to, you know, the fatigue factor, how many reps your kids are having swinging at the ball. And then the other thing too, and this is coming from a different perspective for youth athletes, you know, they also have school and kids are pushed to perform academically. And I think as coaching youth athletes, we have to pay attention to all those things. And more hours in the gym doesn't necessarily equal success in a tournament, right? So
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents.
yeah. I was going to add that. Make sure that, like I said before, if your athlete is doing something, make sure he's practicing something and not just getting tired. So there's a lot of feedback that for me needs to happen between the players and the coaches. But if you have a player that want to do more than what is designed, that they want to do extra reps, make sure that he's actually doing something that will help him, and not just getting reps, and then of course he will be tired for the sequence of practices and games.
Yeah, that's really great advice from all of you guys, not only with that, but from this whole episode today. I think this was such a great episode, such a fun episode. I want to thank all of you guys again for joining today. And we hope to have you guys back in the future on another Volley Talk. I'm sure the audience would love to have you back. Audience, thank you guys for such great questions today. They were so in depth. We love that. And just some final closing things. Just a reminder that our fall clinics are starting soon and they are selling out. So make sure that if you want to attend a clinic this fall, you are getting signed up as soon as possible at any of the locations, because you don't want to miss out and have to wait until next summer then to go to a clinic. But if you can't make it to a clinic and you still want to train with us, there's always the master class that is available. You can click the link in bio to find either the clinic or the masterclass pages. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always DM us or comment, and we will be sure to answer those questions for you guys as soon as possible. Next week, we will be back with another Volley Talk on Tuesday again. And we hope to see you guys all back on next week's episode. So thank you guys all again for joining, Daniel, Aaron, and Kelly. And thank you to the audience for all watching today. Bye.